thank you for your interest and application. I understand it looks like you applied for both circuit and county court. If you could tell us a little bit about your background, experience, and qualifications for judicial office.
Okay, good morning everybody, and thank you for your time. My name is Jacquelyn Clifton. I have been an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Florida since April 2002. I started as a prosecutor in the juvenile division at the state attorney's office, and I worked my way up to homicide. One of the benefits of being a prosecutor is that you get to spend a lot of time in the courtroom. So I'm well versed in courtroom decorum, in handling evidence, and dealing with expert witnesses and lay witnesses and law enforcement and the public as a whole in jury selections, things like that. In homicide, you get to get in a little bit early from the beginning of the case, and you work in the investigations, attend autopsies, look at the evidence from the beginning. You prepare for the grand jury, present to the grand jury for an indictment, and then of course try the case, and if it's a death penalty case, go through the penalty phase and the sentencing. So I have a lot of experience there. I have done some years in family law, and both for a firm and also for myself when the world went virtual. I still take family law cases every so often, but my focus now is civil litigation, and I'm doing insurance defense, I do construction defects and premise liability, and from here I hope to move on to take the bench and be the next judge for the 7th Judicial Circuit.
What area of law do you like best?
You know, there's something really special about being a prosecutor, I believe, and working on behalf of the state of Florida. So I like that area of law a lot, but I don't know that it's necessarily criminal law. I spent a lot of time as a prosecutor, so I learned to be a lawyer. I learned the expectation. I learned, you know, to show up in court and preparation, and a lot of very important traits that I've carried through me, with me throughout my career. I think there's pros and cons for all of the areas of law. I like, probably in my current practice, I like maybe the premise liability a little more than the construction defect. I like the complex litigation more than I do the straight track. So, you know, but the goal is to get in and do a good job and, you know, work hard for your client, whatever law you're in.
Why do you want to serve as a judge?
I believe that being a judge is the highest honor that you can achieve in our profession. And I believe that to be a judge should come after working a career with integrity, with intention, practicing law with responsibility, with a good work ethic. And I have done that, and I believe too that a strong role for a judge is to be a mentor to young attorneys. I believe that it is a role that you have a lot of impact and outreach for our community, and I think all of that is so very important, and I would love to leave the practice of law better than when I found it.
Do you have a preference, circuit or county?
So I knew you were going to ask that question, and I thought a lot about it, and my answer to you is no. I've spent my career in the circuit court practicing. I wasn't even a misdemeanor in the state attorney's office. The only time I spent time in misdemeanor was either covering for somebody or training somebody. So I think that there's a lot of new opportunities and different challenges. I think that a lot of what I have and what I've learned in my practice is transferable throughout the courts. I think that it's really the person and what you're taking to the bench that is going to serve me. What I'm bringing to the bench will serve me whichever seat I am on. But you know, I would be excited to sit on either the circuit or the county court bench.
What do you think makes somebody a good judge?
Well, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, integrity, I think knowledge of the law, I think respect, I think patience, I think courage. And when I say courage, I mean because sometimes you have to do the hard things and not the popular things, but if it's the right thing, you have to do it. So you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, know what you're doing is because it is the right thing to do, and you have to have thick skin. But it also matters that you have some empathy, or you show empathy, that people feel like when they're in front of you, they matter to you, that they're not a number, they're not hurting in and out. You can do all of that, follow the law as written. I think that's really important as well. You have to follow the law. And I think you can do that while taking into account that the people that are before you really, really matter, and where they are on that particular day and communicating with you and standing before the court matters so much to them. I think legal acumen in certain situations and trials, things like that, I think all of those together are what's important for a judge.
Do you have a judicial philosophy, and if so, what is it?
So, yes, I do, and it is to focus on the law as written and to follow precedent. It's interesting because as a young attorney coming in, you don't necessarily know if you do or you don't, right? You don't know that term, you're not thinking in that way. But as a young prosecutor, as I said, you're in the courtroom all the time, starting from day one. And so a lot of times coming in, you're like, what am I supposed to do? And so in order to get the focus, in order to know where to go, you start with the rules, right? You start with the statutes, and you're like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to prove. This is why we're prosecuting this person. So very early on, without even recognizing that it was a philosophy, that's what I practiced.
What about electability? Talking about your contacts with Volusia County and the 7th Circuit, and if you had to run an election, how do you think you handle that?
Sure. I believe I would do very well in an election. When I worked in the 7th Circuit, I started in Volusia County, as I've stated, and then when the time came and I was promoted to homicide, although living in Ormond, I was covering our homicide north, which is Flagler, Volusia, and Putnam. And so it was only going to be a temporary assignment, but that's when I realized I really don't know anyone in the north side of our circuit. I don't know the law enforcement, I don't know the judges, I don't know a lot of our prosecutors, I didn't know a lot of the defense attorneys, so I had requested to remain in the northern counties. And in doing so, I have maintained a lot of connections there. I've watched, and as so many of my colleagues through the years have gone on to do amazing and great things in the 7th Circuit and maintain those connections. And of course, in Volusia County, the same. I still come and visit. As I got here today, I saw a lot of people that I got to talk to and reminisce with for a little bit before I was called in here. I practiced in DeLand. I was in front of the original Judge Foxman, James Foxman, in DeLand for a period of time. And so, again, I've maintained both professional and personal contacts throughout the circuit.
Who's that one judge that you were in front of that you go, that's who I would want to try and emulate? They really nailed it.
Who I believe made me a very, very strong litigator and attorney is Judge Parsons. He was my very first felony judge, and I went straight from juvenile to felony. Juvenile is bench trials, and on my very first day in felony court, it happened to be trial day. And so none of my trials went. However, my supervisor at the time, former Judge McLaughlin, he had to pick a different jury. So he handed me a folder, and he's like, hey, you need to try this case. So I'm literally reading the case for the first time as the jury's coming in to select that jury. I had a good mentor, Karen Foxman, sat with me on that. As I ran upstairs, I'm like, help somebody, please. And so Judge Parsons, from the very beginning, he had an expectation of the people that appeared before him to be ready, to be prepared, to know their case, to be, fair, but to know what he expected of you in that courtroom. He wasn't always happy with me, I did my best to make sure that I was always all of those things, but sometimes things are out of your control, or sometimes trying to get evidence that, people are looking for, things like that. Sometimes things happen, So he held everybody's feet to the fire in the role that they were in his presence. I think it was good because you knew what to expect when you went in there. So another thing as prosecutors, you get the opportunity to get to practice in front of the same judge over and over. And that helps. Right now in my practice, I'm all over the state on a, 5-minute Zoom hearing. But you get to develop relationships. So some other ones that influenced me was Judge Piggott, Judge Berger in St. Augustine. A lot of them on my references. Judge Mendoza, he was in Putnam. I got to practice in front of Judge Mendoza. And then a lot of the people today that are on the bench were my colleagues. So I haven't really practiced in front of them, but I practiced with them for years, and so I have a lot of admiration for her.
One of the things that obviously the distinction between county and circuit is the potential to be involved in a death case. I appreciate the items that you included in your application concerning discussions with church and Father Phil and things of that sort. Going back to the integrity, the right thing, and then the death penalty, if that ends up on your plate. How do you reconcile? How have you come to reconcile yourself in terms of that particular job?
It was tough because I was raised in the church. I was raised Catholic, right? And there's a right to life and everything like that. So it was important to me to personally know that I was in there and I was fighting for the right reasons. And that I was doing it with all of me, because if I'm not committed to doing a job, then I shouldn't be doing that job. And I'm okay with that. Not all jobs are for all people, and I'm okay with that if it's not for me. So that's why I took the time to sit down with my priest and really discuss it with him, because as I said in my application, it's not just, oh, you're Catholic. They would get people up, and I'm sitting in church, and he's like, who's coming so we can go challenge the execution? And I didn't want to feel like an imposter either in my job or in my church. So that's why I took the time to go and have the conversations with them. And time and time again, I came down to the people that I was prosecuting for the reasons that I was prosecuting when we were looking to use the death penalty. It wasn't every homicide. It wasn't most homicides. It was the occasional homicide. We roundtabled it. A lot of time, effort, energy went into it. Our state attorney, it matters so much to him that we're doing it the right, or that we were doing it the right way. I don't want to speak for him now. But as part of that team, there was so much that went into it that I knew that when I walked out, when the decision was made, when we made that determination, this is a case that warrants the death penalty, that it really was. It was almost, there was no question by the time the work was put in on the front end. And still I feel that way. I feel if it's brought before me, I feel like I can weigh the aggravators, the statutory aggravators and the mitigators, statutory, non-statutory mitigators, and if in fact it's warranted, I am fine to be in that situation and to make that decision.
You were interviewed by the governor's office, were you not?
I was.
And was there anything in that process that surprised you, or you've given some thought, 2 cents about what may give you your best shot?
Like everything, this has been a learning process. And I think the more you do something, the better you get, right? I learned, or I was told in law school from the very beginning, there's going to be, and this is true my whole career, there's going to be 3 closing arguments. The one you're going to make, the one you make, and then the one you shouldn't make. And I can't tell you how many nights I laid there after trials and I'm like, oh, why didn't I argue this? It's like, wait, they found him guilty, they found her guilty, it's fine, you know, you did what you needed to do. It's moving on, yeah, exactly, like, let it go. So there's some of that, right? I mean, literally walking out the door, you wanted to turn around and be like, oh, wait, one more thing, you know. But what I'll say is, you know, what I learned, there's a lot I learned, but I think for what I'd like to share is that they're just like us. They're there trying to do the best job they can to make the best decisions that they can make. I think they accept that you guys do an amazing job. And so when people get up there, they're qualified, and you know that it's a hard decision for them, and they're there doing the best that they can. If I got through, I wish that I could go back up there, but based on the time, you know, I can't. But there's a lot of personal growth, I think, that occurred there as well. You know, just really looking at people there that are happy to be there and are following their passion, it felt like. So it was a very positive experience.
I have one quick question. Would you be relocating to this area?
Of course, yes. So my goal was never to stay away, and it was always supposed to be a temporary stay. And then as I went into detail in my application, some of the amazing, best reasons why that was delayed some, and then of course COVID delayed it some more. And you blink and years go by. So my family is in Jacksonville and Tampa, and so where we are now, we're 4.5 hours away. Our goal is always to get closer to family. As I said, I've maintained friends. I have a lease, you know, that I have a realtor that I have worked with. I have pre-approved for homes, and you know, I have places to stay. So 100%, and the expectation is that I would be here, and then my husband would follow once he took care of stuff.
This is your closing argument. Anything else you want to say?
Do I get to turn around if I have to?
Probably not.
You know, thank you again for your time, and welcome to the people that were just appointed. And it's just not, although this is my closing argument, you know, that is one of the things that I've learned most about this process is that, you know, it's not about me. It's so much bigger than me, and I appreciate being a small part of it. I believe that the 7th Judicial Circuit is such a special place, which is why 100% we're always coming back, and I look forward to that, whether I'm on the bench or not. I believe that based on all of my experience, I believe that on the way I practice, the length of my career, I believe my reputation. Certainly I don't know what you were told when you did your investigation, but I believe that it should be positive because I do practice with integrity. I would take all of that to the bench. I would do my very best to engage in community. I would do my best to do all of the things that I told you that I believe make a good judge. And I'm prepared. I'm prepared to work hard. I'm prepared to work happy. I'm prepared to do the hard things. And I would like that opportunity to serve as a judge, either the county court or the circuit court in the 7th Judicial Circuit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.